Every day, billions of dollars move between African countries. But there is something strange. Much of that money doesn't travel directly from one African country to another. It leaves Africa first. It passes through foreign banks. It gets converted into foreign currency. And by the time it comes back, African businesses have lost time, money, and control. You see, for decades, this system quietly taxed trade across the continent, and almost nobody talked about it until now. Because Africa just built something that could rewrite the rules of continental trade. It's called PAPSS. You see, most people think it's another payment platform. They are missing something. So the real story here is about who controls African trade, who controls African money, and whether Africa can really trade with itself without leaning on financial systems built somewhere else. Now, if PAPSS succeeds, historians may look back and say Africans' financial independence started quietly with a financial system that almost nobody noticed at the time. Let me show you exactly what the hidden system looked like in real life. Now imagine a company in Ghana sells cocoa. The buyer is in Kenya, both African countries, both African money. But the payment doesn't go straight there. It flies out to New York or London first, turns into dollars, sits in someone else's bank for a few days, turns back into African money, and finally lands in Ghana, smaller than it left. Now here is what that actually cost. Let's say it's a $200 million deal. Big enough to matter, common enough that something like it happens somewhere on this continent every week. Moving that money between two African banks under the old system can eat somewhere between 10 to 30% of it. Reuters reported that number straight from figures published by the system itself. 10 to 30% on $200 million, that's up to $60 million. Gone, not stolen, not taxed by any government, just quietly lost in the pipes every single time. Now here is an easy way to picture that. Let's take two neighbors in a village. One has a goat, the other one has grains. Very simple trade, except the rules are very complicated. Before you hand over the goods, you have to walk over to the next village or the next town. Then swap your goods for a currency that nobody in your own village uses. Then you pay a toll to the man running the exchange. Then you walk all the way back to your own village. And only then does the grain exchange happen. You see, nobody built that on purpose to hurt the two neighbors. It just became the accepted way of doing business decades ago. And nobody thought about repairing it or finding a shorter way until now. PAPSS actually went live in Accra on January 13, 2022, built by the Afreximbank with the African Union and the African Continental Free Trade Area Secretariat. In plain English, a bank in Nigeria can now pay a bank in Kenya directly in their own money, and that cash never have to leave Africa and get converted somewhere else first. Now, most people will stop right there and file PAPSS under a faster payment method simply. That is nice, but it is small, and it's exactly the mistake this video is built to correct. PAPSS wasn't even a new idea in 2022. The African Union put it on paper back in 2019 in Niger. So why the 3-year wait? I kept digging, and one detail made me to change my understanding about the whole thing. In June 2025, Reuters ran a piece that framed PAPSS as something much bigger. African countries finding ways to pay each other without the dollar. And that was right next to warnings coming out of Washington about countries drifting away from the dollar. I want you to read that again. That's how a major wire service is framing this whole thing now as part of the fight over who controls the world's money. Now, before this turns into something it isn't, let me be straight with you. PAPSS isn't trying to kill the dollar. Reuters quoted the CEO himself, Mike Obalo, saying it plainly, the goal is not to eliminate the dollar. That detail matters, and a channel chasing outrage would have left it out. You remember my friend in Lagos who runs import-export business? He told me something that stuck with me. Finding buyers in other African countries was easy, but getting paid by them without losing a slice to some bank he's never even met was the actual nightmare. And that's the real answer hiding underneath this whole story. Africa's trade problem was never really about roads or borders. It's the invisible layer beneath all of it, the money layer. Once people in power understood that, everything moved fast. Now, there is another part that got me. In 2025, PAPS launched something even bigger, the African Currency Marketplace. It lets African currencies trade directly against each other, with no dollar standing in the middle at all. In its first test run, it handles transactions across 12 different currencies. Now, that's a small test, but it is the early shape of a completely different financial map for this continent. And that completely changed the way I understood where this was actually headed. Then in 2026, the Bank of Central African States joined the network, pulling in an entire regional currency zone, including Cameroon. By July this year, PAPS says it connects 28 countries, more than 190 banks, and 16 national payment switches. And the system itself estimates that settling trade this way could save Africa around $5 billion a year. And that's every single year. Money that would otherwise walk out the door stays home. But then I hit a wall because I promised you this isn't a hype video. And here is the honest part. Reuters also reported that PAPS hasn't published exactly how much money is actually moving through the system. So while the country count keeps climbing, nobody outside the institution really knows yet how much of this is live trade and how much is still potential. And there is a harder question underneath all of that. When the pressure is on and the deal is worth real money, will businesses actually trust their own currencies or quietly default back to dollars anyway? You see, nobody can answer that. Not PAPS, not Reuters, not me. You see, there is nothing weak about that. It simply means the story is still being written right now while you are watching it. Now, there is something that stuck with me the most. PAPS used cowrie in its branding. You see, long before any of this, cowrie shells were money across this continent, trading hands long before London or New York even existed. So Africa is rebuilding something that was already its own, centuries old, just updated for right now. Zoom out and this story stops being a payment story completely. Now, financial institution, the pipes that money moves, is one of the quietest forms of power there is. Whoever controls the rails has leverage that never shows up in a headline, but shows up every time a country needs to trade, borrow, or grow. Ports, cables, power grids, payment systems, they all sit in the same category. The greatest thing here is that Africa is not waiting for someone else to build this, and that alone is a game changer. Afreximbank didn't wait. The African Union didn't outsource it. African institutions built the plumbing themselves, and that's a completely different story from the one the world usually tells about this continent. So here is what I actually want you to take from this. If you are in the diaspora and you have ever hesitated to send money into a business back home, or invest in trading across 2 or 3 African countries, the cost of moving that money is starting to come down for real structurally. Watch whether your own country's banks show up on this network over the next year. If they join and go quiet, adoption is still early. If they start publishing real numbers, it means it has crossed to everyday life, and that one detail will tell you more than any press release will ever do. Now, imagine the cost of trading across Africa drops by 90% over the next 5 years. What would you build? Who would you finally trade with? Would you back that cousin's business in another African country instead of assuming it's too complicated? Tell me in the comments. I read everyone, and honestly, some of the best insights on this channel come from the comments, not from me. So Africa didn't wait for authorization from someone else to build this. The only question is whether the rest of us build on top of it or just watch it happen from far away. See you in my next video. I'm Samuel Lewis. You're watching Africa Today. Bye. If you haven't subscribed, please make sure you do so. You aren't going to lose anything. Also, make sure to like and share this video with loved ones, because that is a very important part you are playing to this revolution, to this financial revolution. See you in my next video. Bye again for the second time.